Tonight, extreme weather evacuation. Tens of thousands of young scouts on the move in South Korea. The dangerous typhoon threat after scorching temperatures.
This is an unprecedented situation.
The course of action for hundreds of Canadian campers. Fierce flames force out hundreds from a BC music festival.
They just started piling in and left.
The new warnings prompted by fast-moving wildfires.
Pretty scary because we're very, very close.
Plus, the Canadian rapper accused of shooting Megan Thee Stallion. The sentencing hearing for Tory Lanez in an LA courtroom.
Whenever a black woman tells her truth, that does empower anyone to come forward.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Scouts across the world have a motto: be prepared. But there are new questions tonight about whether the country hosting them was ready for an international jamboree. And now a massive evacuation is underway at this hour as a powerful storm tracks towards South Korea. 235 Canadian scouts and more than 140 volunteers are part of a group of 36,000, mostly teenagers, packing up tents ahead of a powerful typhoon tracking towards the country's western coast. This after hundreds got sick in a sweltering heat wave. CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin on the criticisms and the course of action.
Scouts stayed on one last night at camp at the World Jamboree before pulling up stakes. The South Korean government ordered the coastal site's evacuation as a typhoon loomed. Officials mobilized more than 1,000 buses to transport the 36,000 participants from 156 countries. Scouts Canada said this is not an emergency evacuation, that it is a planned departure from the Jamboree site to ensure the ongoing safety of our youth and volunteers. Campers aren't leaving the country. They're moving to school dormitories around the Seoul area and are set to continue Jamboree activities until the weekend. The threat of the storm, expected to make landfall in the Korean peninsula in coming days, was yet another blow for the Jamboree. The Scouts faced crushing heat for days. Hundreds were treated for heat-related ailments. Contingents from some countries, including the U.S. and the UK, packed up and left, saying the site, a vast treeless area made on land reclaimed from the sea, was not safe enough.
The first is the sanitation. We were concerned that the toilets weren't being cleaned frequently enough, there wasn't soap in there, and it wasn't safe, and there was rubbish building up as well.
Facing criticism it was not prepared to host the Jamboree, the South Korean government stepped up measures to ensure the safety of participants. The Canadian contingent of 235 scouts and 143 volunteers opted not to leave, a decision many parents here in Canada applauded. Then came news of a potential typhoon.
Scouts is about teaching kids resiliency and adaptation, and they are doing that more than any of us expected.
Tuka Shahari's 17-year-old son has told her he's enjoying meeting teenagers from around the world, feeling safe with the Canadian contingent, and she's happy he's staying abroad.
That's the Scout spirit, because regardless of all those things, with the typhoon coming, they're dying of heat, some of the activities are canceled, they're still enjoying themselves. And I think that's where the story is.
Some leaders say there should be a review conducted once this Jamboree wraps, so that lessons are learned for the next event in 4 years. Genevieve Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Stormy weather across Europe has led to deadly flooding and travel chaos. At least 7 people died in floods and landslides across Slovenia, Austria, and Croatia. The storms forcing the evacuation of villages and leaving widespread devastation. Scandinavian countries are dealing with the most extreme wet weather system to hit the region in decades. Heavy rain and landslides are blamed for this derailment in Sweden. High winds and rain also canceled ferries and flights throughout most of northern Europe. And thousands of flights have been canceled in the U.S. as severe storms work their way across the country. Nearly 30 million people on the East Coast are bracing for possible hurricane-force wind gusts, hail, and tornadoes.
Huge tornado.
This twister was spotted over southern Illinois.
Look how strong that is.
Roofs were ripped off homes in the area. A severe thunderstorm last night outside of Washington sent thousands of Beyoncé fans scrambling for safety. And in Alaska, a quickly melting glacier overwhelmed waterways, eroded banks, and swept away at least 2 homes. A terrifying long weekend for hundreds of people attending a music festival in BC's interior. A sudden wildfire forced them to flee before flames got any closer. From the International Space Station, you can see the heavy blanket of smoke over the area. But as CTV's Lauren Pullen reports, it's just one of more than 400 fires scorching the province.
Tearing through this southern BC hillside, a wildfire near Princeton sparking Sunday spread quickly. Kilometers away, upwards of 1,000 long weekend festival goers enjoying the party until flames forced them to flee.
Oh my gosh, like, are we going to be able to get out of here? It got very smoky. It was starting to rain ash. And then, as we were driving out of there down the roads, it was almost like driving through hell.
The festival, a campground, and a few homes evacuated, according to Princeton's mayor, but the rush to safety went smoothly.
You know, it started, just before dark, and by 1:30 in the morning, we'd had everybody out.
RCMP say the wildfire started after an ATV caught fire. The flames spread quickly toward the nearby village of Colmont Sunday night.
We're about 2 kilometers from the fire location. Pretty scary because we're very, very close.
It's hard to imagine that the home that you have built and lived in for our 15 years here could go up in flames. So it's kind of a little bit in shock, I suppose.
It's one of more than 400 active fires in the province as BC's record-breaking wildfire season rages on. More than 45 new fires sparking in the last 24 hours alone.
We are experiencing some hot and dry conditions in the province at the moment. We've had temperatures above 30 degrees the last couple of days, but we are anticipating to see a few degrees cooler over the next few days here.
And while the firefight continues across BC, the good news near Princeton, everyone got out with quite a story to tell.
It's definitely an unforgettable moment. That'll go down the books.
Lauren Pullen, CTV News, Vancouver.
3 years after George Floyd's murder, the last of the former Minneapolis police officers charged in connection with his death was sentenced today to nearly 5 years in prison. Tutau was found guilty of aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter in May. He denied any wrongdoing, saying he served as a, quote, human traffic cone, while another former officer kneeled on Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes.
I did the best I thought I could. Obviously, the outcome didn't come out the way I wanted it.
The judge said he was hoping to see more remorse. Tao is already serving a 3.5-year federal sentence. A Canadian rapper will have to wait at least one more day to find out his sentence in a high-profile case playing out in Los Angeles. The hearing began today for Tory Lanez, who was convicted of shooting superstar Megan Thee Stallion. CTV's Vanessa Lee has the latest.
Why did I bring you outside?
Prosecutors sought a 13-year sentence for Brampton, Ontario rapper Tory Lanez. They argued not only has he shown a lack of remorse, he has re-traumatized Megan Thee Stallion with social media posts, emboldening many of his more than 2 million followers to attack her. In court today, they read her statement. Since I was viciously shot by the defendant, I have not experienced a single day of peace. Slowly but surely, I'm healing and coming back, but I will never be the same. Lane's lawyers say he should only get probation and be released from jail to enter a substance abuse program. His father pleaded for mercy as the judge received at least 70 letters of support, including from his 6-year-old son. Lanez was convicted of shooting the Grammy-winning artist in the feet with a handgun during an argument. But at times, it seemed as though Megan was the one on trial.
Hey, Megan, why you lying on that boy?
The target of vitriol fueled by misogyny and misinformation.
Might go down to G.O.D.
Even Drake rapped that a stallion lied about getting shot. Megan called December's guilty verdict a victory for every woman who has ever been shamed, dismissed, and blamed for a violent crime committed against them.
whenever a Black woman tells her truth and she's actually heard, when it does empower other Black women. It does empower anyone to come forward and provide their truth as well.
Lanez faces a maximum sentence of 22 years in prison and could be deported back to Canada. His sentencing hearing resumes tomorrow. Omar.
All right, Vanessa, thank you. Donald Trump says a move by prosecutors to limit what he can say about the 2020 election case violates his free speech. The prosecutors warned his words may have a chilling effect on witnesses, citing the social media post, "If you go after me, I'm coming after you." The judge may now hold a hearing on the matter. Trump remains the front runner to lead the Republicans, but in an NBC interview, his main opponent says Trump did lose in 2020.
No, of course he lost.
Trump lost the 2020 election.
Of course, Joe Biden's the president.
Poll numbers currently have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis running second in the race. As West African leaders prepare to meet this week to discuss what's next after Niger's coup leaders refused to reinstate the country's ousted president, ruling military leaders from Mali and Burkina Faso met in Niger with the country's junta in a show of support. Here's CTV's Rahim Ladani on the continuing fallout.
In the latest act of defiance, Niger's military has shut down the country's airspace until further notice and is bringing in reinforcements to the capital, accusing foreign powers of preparing an attack. This coup spokesperson says any attempts to violate the national airspace will be met with a forceful and instantaneous response.
The airspace right now being shut down means that anyone in Niamey cannot leave. That includes a lot of expats and Westerners in particular who've been trying to get out. But it also means that nothing can come in.
Leaders of West Africa's regional bloc, known as ECOWAS, say they will meet on Thursday in neighboring Nigeria to discuss next steps, after their deadline for the military to reinstate the country's ousted president passed without success.
I think there's still time for diplomacy to play itself out, although the situation, it does look rather bleak.
Thousands of pro-military supporters packed a stadium over the weekend as leaders proclaimed their loyalty would be repaid. President Mohamed Bazoum was elected in 2021. It was Niger's first peaceful and democratic transfer of power since the country's independence in 1960. He's been under house arrest since the coup 2 weeks ago.
The only way to deal with this coup is through longer-term negotiations and look for, again, some form of transition program, not a reversal overnight.
The United States says it plans to maintain both a diplomatic and military presence in Niger for the foreseeable future.
We remain in touch with President Bazoum. Officials from the State Department spoke to him earlier today.
Meanwhile, Canada has announced it will no longer be sending direct funding to Niger's government, but will continue supporting humanitarian efforts on the ground. Rahim Ladani, CTV News, Toronto.
Ukrainian intelligence has revealed the arrest of a woman Kyiv says was planning to assassinate President Volodymyr Zelensky. Authorities say the unidentified woman was caught, quote, red-handed and is a Russian spy who was tracking Zelensky on his planned visit to Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine at the end of July. Time for a short break, but when we come back...
We've never had an entire system shut down before.
Outrage over transit troubles in Canada's capital. Plus, remembering acclaimed director William Friedkin. A video conferencing pioneer of remote work during the pandemic is ordering its employees back to the office. Zoom says any employee who lives within 80 kilometers of an office must come in at least twice a week, a move the company says will better allow workers to innovate. Despite a stock surge during the height of COVID, Zoom has struggled to keep growing once the lockdowns lifted. Well, Zoom is not a word commuters in the capital are using these days to describe how their public transit is moving. The light rail system has been stalled for 3 weeks this summer because of a service wheel issue. Since it opened in 2019, Ottawa's LRT has been fully or partially shut down for at least 10 weeks. There's now word service will resume tomorrow, but not completely. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on what the city's transit troubles could signal for other Canadian cities.
Riders were promised a first-class system when Ottawa's light rail transit opened nearly 4 years ago. But ever since, the $2.1 billion LRT has been plagued by issue after issue.
I do take it every day and find it to be heavily unreliable. Really disappointed with the system right now.
I just moved here October 1st and I'm from Toronto, and we'd never had an entire system shut down before.
The system has been shut down for 3 weeks due to a problem with a bearing. Similar troubles led to incidents in the summer of 2021 and 2022. Now, every axle and wheel bearing needs to be redesigned and replaced, and the tracks themselves altered in some spots to reduce wear and tear on the vehicles.
I think it has been embarrassing for the people of Ottawa to have a system that is unreliable.
There were persistent failures.
Last winter, a public inquiry concluded the city gambled with unproven technology and rushed the system into service due to political pressure. New city staff say permanent fixes are underway and part of the system will reopen tomorrow.
I know our work is not yet done, but I want to thank our customers for their patience.
But Ottawa isn't the only city asking riders for patience. Last week, Montreal's new light rail trains experienced 2 temporary shutdowns within 24 hours of its official opening. In Toronto, the Eglinton Crosstown LRT is years late and at least $1 billion over budget, leading to calls for greater transparency around public-private partnerships.
It looks great for governments to not have to spend billions of dollars in contracting with private companies themselves. But the problem is, when you have 30-year contracts for projects that don't work, it actually is costing the public a lot more.
Ottawa still has 2 more LRT expansion stages to complete, but Ontario's premier says until these transit problems are fixed, those projects won't get any more money. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
A car chase under a train is just one of the many scenes director William Friedkin is being remembered for tonight. Friedkin won an Oscar directing Gene Hackman in The French Connection. He followed that up with an even bigger blockbuster with the horror classic The Exorcist. He has worked steadily in film and television since then, with his final film set to open next month. William Friedkin was 87. Still ahead on this long weekend, moving past the pandemic. A warm welcome in Banff, Alberta, filled once again with tourists from across Canada and around the world. There are promising signs the tourism industry is bouncing back. One of Canada's most majestic tourist hotspots got so packed it temporarily shut down for a few hours. CTV's Tyson Fedor on Banff's business boom after a pandemic low.
The Elimelech family from Toronto are experiencing the tourist hotbed for the first time together as a family.
But it's nice to be back with the kids. It's a different experience and long weekend, so much action going on here and lots of people, good energy. It's great.
For son Eitan, he was blown away by the natural beauty the community has to offer.
The mountains are really beautiful, and we're staying in a hotel, and the castle is just like, it's great, beautiful.
But the town site is finally starting to return to pre-pandemic normal. Visitors from around the globe checking off Banff from their bucket list, a sign of good things to come for the owner of Block Kitchen and Bar.
We've seen a steady, gradual comeback of visitation, primarily with domestic tourism for the last 2 summers. And this summer, spring and summer, we're definitely starting to see the return of international tourism.
The town says it sees nearly 10,000 unique vehicles in the community daily and 30,000 pedestrians on Banff Ave during summer months. The RCMP and National Park shut down visitor access to Lake Louise on Sunday due to the volume of people trying to get in.
The Friday was steady, busy. Saturday was great. Yesterday was particularly busy.
For Stéphane Prévost, a bustling Banff equates to good business, but he wants to envision Banff continuing to harness on its worldwide appetite.
The challenge is going to be for all of us, business owner, people at Banff Lake Louise Tourism, the town of Banff, to really, continue to work on the 10-year vision plan that we've been trying to create to make Banff, a sustainable tourism destination, eco-friendly.
90% of Banff's economy is involved in tourism. Tyson Fedor, CTV News, Calgary.
Some amusing moments at a CFL game in Regina this weekend when the Rough Riders halftime show was hijacked by a rambunctious ram.
The young kids were going to go ride the road.
The Riders were celebrating country night with the children's rodeo when a scene-stealing sheep broke loose from its pen and led stadium staff to chase after it. The loose livestock was eventually corralled. After the break, creating a soundtrack of inspiration. How music therapy helped this musician overcome cancer.
Well, welcome to my happy place, where the sun is hot and my glass is never empty.
It's been said that music can heal the soul. For a BC musician, the power of music is what got her through cancer and led her on a path to encourage others. CTV's Adam Sawatsky on her notes of inspiration.
When Jamie Hamilton started learning guitar as a child, it felt like a chore.
I wouldn't pick it up until the next week when I had lessons.
She was more interested in making up for lost time at the lake after surviving leukemia.
I didn't really remember when I was 5, I was still pretty young.
But Jamie will never forget being just a few years older when at 9, the cancer returned.
Sometimes when I get bad headaches or something, I have to go in the hospital.
And along with enduring high doses of chemo and radiation, was prescribed music therapy.
I found myself gravitating towards the guitar.
After 2 years of treatments, Jamie celebrated being cancer-free on the lake before eventually being diagnosed with leukemia for a 3rd time when she was 12.
Felt really bad most of the time.
Yet every time, Jamie's guitar would be there to hear all the hard things she couldn't find the words to say.
And I found songwriting really was that healing outlet for me.
Jamie started pursuing music with a passion, and after a successful bone marrow transplant, recorded a song in support of the Children's Wish Foundation about her struggles and triumphs.
I survive. In my weakest moment, I didn't think I would survive. And here I am. I'm always content.
Now, more than a decade cancer-free, now a professional musician, Jamie's latest song, Stomping Ground, is inspired by returning to her beloved lake as an adult that she often missed as a child.
Leave me here in my stomping ground.
You only live once, so you just have to enjoy every moment. You really aren't promised tomorrow.
Which is why, every day, Jamie is so grateful to the little girl she once was.
She was very strong way back then.
Who grew up to become the woman who's striving to inspire others to never give up hope and always make the most of every moment.
That little girl, I'm like, oh, I'm just living out her dreams doing that.
Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Langford.
Beautiful story. And that's a snapshot of this Monday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.